Well, here we are. We're between Christmas and New Year's. And we're in that in-between place and just looking at the new year. And what I wanted to do was to kind of revisit Christmas again, but in a very tangential way. So yeah, it's going to be one of those little journeys that we're going to take together. But for years now, I have understood Christmas in a different way. And that has become the theme of all of our Christmas services, trying to get across to you what I see as the real message that Christmas is trying to get across to us. That ironically, the Christmas story is about the smallness of things, not the greatness of things. It's about the smallness of God, as opposed to the spectacular imaginings that we have for God. I mean, think about it. The way that we imagine God. How do you imagine God? Put God in your mind. You know, somewhere way up there, we call him the man upstairs, and we call him all this and that. We imagine great thrones and clouds and rays of light and all these things. But how does God with us, Emmanuel, come to us on Christmas? As an impoverished, helpless child, lying in a manger because there's no room in the living space of the people's homes in which his parents are staying. And we have this huge dichotomy of people who can see who he is, can see through those humble exteriors to something that is significant, and those who can't. And the difference between the two, it comes down to who is prepared to be able to see beneath that surface. Who is prepared to be able to see through their spectacular expectations to something that just doesn't fit the bill, and yet is true at the same time. It has to do with someone who is prepared to look for God and look for meaning in all the wrong places, as opposed to the way that our society, our culture, and our religion has built up our image of God. How are we supposed to prepare for something like that? How do we become one of those people? Either the Magi, Joseph, Mary, or the shepherds. How do we become those kind of people with that kind of consciousness who can actually see what Christmas is all about? The message of Christmas, that our God is an unassuming God. Our God is a humble God. Our God is a vulnerable God who is able to be in relationship with us because of those attributes. Not so far removed that we can't connect. And yet still the Alpha and the Omega and everything else. There's that rub. How do we become that kind of people who can see through all of this? We have to start with ourselves. How do you measure your own self-worth? Think about that for a second. How do you measure your own meaning as a human being? Your meaning and purpose as a person here on this earth? Because how you measure yourself is going to mirror how you measure God. And if we are measuring God by our own measurement, well, we're going to be in all sorts of trouble. This is why Jesus was so strong on not judging. He said, don't judge, because the measure that you use is going to be measured on you, not by somebody else, but by ourselves. Whatever standards we hold for ourselves in terms of our self-worth, we are putting it out there for everyone and vice versa, including God. And we're going to miss God as he appears, Emmanuel, God with us. We're going to miss the hour of our visitation if we haven't prepared. Now, it's absolutely natural for us to measure ourselves this way, right? How big, how far, how fast, how long. These are the ways that the world measures. And so that's been drummed into us. Unfortunately, it's what religion has drummed into us as well. It's all we know. It's all that we value, which is even more basic. If these are the things that we value, then these are the things that we're going to be looking for. These are the things that we're going to use as our measuring rods to measure everything around us. And so here's this ultimate irony that comes to us at Christmas, that God is showing us the exact opposite in the Christmas story. The exact opposite in Jesus' entire life, from his birth all the way through to the moment of his death. He never changes in continuing to be that unassuming, small, vulnerable, and humble presence in everyone's life that he touches. In other words, Jesus is always and ever anavim, that Hebrew word that we keep coming back to, that is the ideal of someone who can be in touch with God, part of God's presence, because they are living with an attitude of poverty even if they are rich. They're living with that sense of vulnerability and dependence. They know that they can't make things happen on their own, and so they're completely dependent on their God. Anavim. Even Jesus, as much as we revere Jesus, what did he say? He said, I can't do anything on my own initiative, only what the Father does through me. He was anavim at birth, he was anavim at death, and he was anavim throughout every moment of his life. This is what it's all about. The irony is that what we imagine, either about ourselves or about God, doesn't really exist. We're imagining it. It's electrical firings in our brain, but it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is what is present, right here and right now. That's it. This moment is real. Not the moment that we're remembering, not the moment that we're anticipating, not some moment out there. This moment right here in our experience is real. But that's it. And God is always present. But it's always going to be this moment, here and now, in which his presence is possible for us to enter. And so we need to prepare ourselves to be able to see God in tiny moments like these. And if we're ready, we will be able to do that. But it starts with us. It has to start with us. What do we imagine about ourselves? That imagining doesn't exist. Only what is now exists. If we're still beating ourselves up for things that we did in the past, guess what? That person doesn't exist. This person exists. If we're waiting for us to become something in the future, that person doesn't exist. This person exists. Our imaginings don't exist. This is what Koheleth is trying to tell us. Koheleth is the Hebrew word that literally means someone who is a gatherer, someone who gathers an assembly, an assembler, a gatherer, gathers a crowd. And so literally we would say a teacher or a preacher. But Koheleth is the one who is speaking in Ecclesiastes. And this is what this teacher is trying to get across to us, this nowness. Take a look. Ecclesiastes right at the beginning, chapter 1, verse 1. The words of the teacher, Koheleth, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Great way to start a book of the Bible, don't you think? I love it. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, and yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the people of old. And even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Skip to verse 14. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Verse 17. I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. Does this book really belong in the Bible? It sounds brutally depressing, doesn't it? My gosh, fatalistic, deterministic, dark. The word that is used there in Hebrew, hevel, literally means mere breath, a vapor or a mere breath. But it translates to us, it could be vanity, vain. Vain meaning meaningless, not meaning conceited the way we typically use it. Vanity means meaningless, futile, of no purpose, of no profit. It sounds like the teacher is giving up, doesn't it? But that's not it. Far from giving up. What the teacher is trying to do is to redirect, not give up, but redirect energy, redirect perspective, redirect the source of meaning in all of us. He has tried the spectacular. Solomon is the traditional writer of Ecclesiastes. He's done everything. He's done the biggest. He's done the farthest. He's done the fastest. He's done the longest. He's built up everything in terms of trying to experience the greatest amount of pleasure, the greatest amount of works and buildings and accomplishments, the greatest amount of wealth, the greatest amount of fame, the greatest amount of wisdom in the end. Turning, after all of that had burned out in his psyche, he turns to wisdom. And in the end, he realizes we all have the same death. The wise and the foolish die alike. The rich and the poor, the accomplished and the lazy. Sometimes it seems that evil is rewarded and good is punished. It seems so random at the end, at death. And so the question is, does anything matter? If this is where we all come to, and everything that we do brings us to the same place regardless, does anything matter? Not in this passage, but in the passages we're going to read, the answer is a resounding yes, but not in the direction we traditionally and typically look. We must redirect if we want to find true meaning. Y'all remember the story of the Trojan War? Let me refresh your memory. So one of the kings of Greece, Menelaus, has taken a wife, the Helen, the beautiful Helen, the face that lost 1,000 ships, right? And she is kidnapped by the prince of Troy, Paris, who takes her away to Troy. This starts the Trojan War. So Agamemnon, the brother of Menelaus, gathers all the Achaeans together, all the Greeks together, and they sail off to Troy. And among them is Achilles. And Achilles is an interesting character. He's kind of part god and part man. His mother was Thetis, the sea nymph, who married a human king. And so he had special powers, but she wanted to cheat the fates. And so she took him as an infant, held him by the heel, and dipped him into the river Styx to make him absolutely invulnerable. But guess what? That heel didn't get into the water because that's what she was holding him by. And so he remained vulnerable at the heel, and that's eventually what killed him with a poison arrow from Paris. But Achilles was the greatest of all the warriors. And as he is deciding whether or not to go with Agamemnon's army to Troy, Thetis, his mother, talks to him. And she says, if you stay in Larissa was their home, if you stay in Larissa, you will find peace. You will find a wonderful woman, and you will have sons and daughters who will have children. And they'll all love you and remember your name. But when your children are dead, and their children after them, your name will be forgotten. If you go to Troy, glory will be yours. They will write stories about your victories in thousands of years, and the world will remember your name. But if you go to Troy, you will never come back. For your glory walks hand in hand with your doom, and I shall never see you again. Well, there's a choice, huh? Now, obviously, Achilles is remembered to this very moment that we're talking about him. And traditionally, the Greeks said the Trojan War took place in 1200 BCE. So that's 3,000 years of Achilles being remembered for his prowess. But did he make the right choice? What do you think? Did he make the right choice? Is accomplishment Is a legacy that lives beyond our own generation more important than what happens within our generation? This is the question. What is it we're after? Where do we find meaning? A legacy is something that we leave behind us. Is that what we want to be remembered for? Or is there something here and now? Now, obviously, it's not binary, right? It's not an either or. It never is. There's a both and here as well. But where is the real meaning? Where does real meaning come from? If all our focus is on the future, imaginings of some greatness that we are going to have and be remembered for, then our life will be hevel. It will be vanity. It will be a chasing after the wind, and it will be meaningless. Because when all who knew us are dead, we are unremembered. That may be only 1 or 2 generations. Now, someone may remember, in Achilles' case, we remember his name. We remember the stories about him. We remember maybe the products of someone's legacy. But it's not the same as remembering the person. We can talk about Lincoln. We can talk about historical figures. But we don't remember the person. That's a different thing. And it's a sobering thought if you think about this. And I've been thinking about this for at least a decade now, and I'm 10 years older. But I wanted to read you just a little bit of an email that I sent to someone who had just lost his mother and lost a friend, who himself was facing a really debilitating illness that was keeping him bedridden. And he was starting to worry that he would never write the books he wanted to write, and the books that he wrote would be lost, and his legacy, nothing was happening the way he thought it was going to happen, and he was really depressed. Understandably so. And I wrote to him, hang in, my friend. I can hear the fatigue and fatalism creeping in. Happens to all of us. But with all the loss you've gone through, don't give up. You have so much to give with all you have been through and all you've studied and all you know of our God. Keep giving it away. Find the joy again in the smallest things. I'm realizing that that's really all we have. No matter who or where we are or how much we've attained or not attained, in the end, when we turn out the lights, it's just the little things. Either we see God in them or we don't. Kingdom or not kingdom. I've spent so much time focusing on the wrong things, or better, focusing on things for the wrong reasons. Ultimately, I don't think it matters what we do. I don't think God cares what we do. It doesn't survive with us anyway. But God cares deeply how we do what we do, the manner, the love with which we do whatever we choose to do. As I enter the last phase of my life, the things unaccomplished have begun to weigh on me. Sense of inadequacy, missed opportunity or mission. Depression was hitting more often. Pressure to turn things around. Now, some may look at me and wish they had a platform like mine to work within. And I can do the same looking at someone else. But none of that matters. None of that matters. I know this, but I still fight it as well. Emotionally, the fear is still there, but at lower levels. Now I just keep reminding myself of what Jesus was really telling us. This moment, this detail, this person I'm with is the most important bit in the entire universe. The rest doesn't even exist until I get there. Who will remember any of us past a generation? And if they remember us through writing or buildings or whatever, they're not really remembering us. They're remembering products we produced, not the same thing. Everything we are and we're created to be is momentary, like music. It vibrates in the air for a few moments and then is gone. If we can focus on the vibrations right now, always now, it changes us. I'm slowly changing, getting more comfortable with my circumstances, realizing my accomplishments or lack don't define me at all, especially in the eyes of those who love me most, and God who loves me all. I wrote that 10 years ago. Imagine how much more I feel that way now. And with these last few months that we've gone through, it's put such a finer point on it. watching Nina in her last days, being with her through everything that she went through, going through our own health issues, looking at a big birthday coming next month. All these things have put a finer point on all of this, kind of raised my mortality salience, if you will. I can't help but think about this stuff more as we watch more and more friends go through health and difficulties. A few years ago, I was in the garage looking for something, and I came across these boxes that were like archives of all my intellectual property for the last 40, 50 years. And I'm looking through this, song lyrics, and I'd written plays, and I'd written short stories, and I'd written, I even arranged for full jazz band when I was in college. And here's all of this stuff representing God only knows how many hours of labor and how many years of effort. And I'm thinking, nobody's going to care about any of this stuff. They're not even going to know what to do with it. If I died and my kids were going through my stuff and they came across these boxes, what are they going to do? I read an article that was talking about that exact thing and saying, you know what? You owe it to your kids to clean out all your stuff, because they're going to feel so guilty if they have to take something that obviously meant so much to you, but they don't know anything about it. It doesn't even connect with them. They don't care. And yet to throw it away seems somehow betrayal, right? Do the deed yourself. Clear out the stuff. But this is what we're all faced with. Every single one of us, no matter how young you are, no matter how old, it's coming. No one will remember us past a generation or two. We go onto Ancestry.com and we find all these cool ancestors. Oh, this one came through Ellis Island and did this and did that. And maybe there's a picture. You don't know that person. You won't remember them in a few weeks, probably. You may tell the story once in a while, but no one is going to remember us. And even if they remember our name, that's not us. So what in the world are we doing here? What is our legacy? Well, good thing the teacher has an answer. Take a look at Ecclesiastes starting at verse 2. And this is just going to skip around throughout the entire book. The teacher answers this question, right, of who we are and why we're here and where does meaning come from, over and over and over again in 8 of the 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes. It is a theme that he returns to over and over again. This is just a couple of verses, a sprinkling of what he's saying. At verse 24, there is nothing better for a man or a woman than taking meat and drink and having delight in his work. This again I saw was from the hand of God. Who may take food or have pleasure without God? Chapter 3, verse 12, I am certain that there is nothing better for a man than to be glad and to do good while life is in him, and for every man to take food and drink and have joy in all his work. It is a reward from God. Verse 22, so I saw that there is nothing better than for a man to have joy in his work, because that is his reward. Who will make him see what will come after him? Chapter 9, verse 4, for him who's joined to all the living, there is hope. A living dog is better than a dead lion. And remember, a dog was an unclean animal and a lion revered. So a living dog is still better than a dead lion. Chapter 9, verse 7. Come, take your bread with joy, and your wine with a glad heart. God has taken pleasure in your works. Have joy with the woman of your love all the days of your foolish life, in which he gives you under the sun, because that is your part in life, and in your work which you do under the sun. Whatever comes to your hand, do it with all your power. Be completely immersed in it, in other words. Be completely just taken over by the moment and what you're doing. He's answering the question over and over and over again. And so what seems like fatalism at the beginning, where he's setting up the meaninglessness of the things that we do, it's really this redirection. He's giving us a new perspective that is actually a liberation. It's a liberation from trying to answer the question of meaning and purpose in terms of something that is external to us, in terms of what is a legacy. through external means. To try to answer that question through doing and accomplishments and roles that we play. All of that is only going to prove to be hevel, to be mere breath, to be futile, to be of no profit. If we're fortunate earlier in life rather than later, through just sheer exhaustion of trying to keep up with all the accomplishments and everything that we think is giving us meaning, or maybe it's going to be through some traumatic loss that strips away all the illusion, forces us to accommodate life in a different way, or maybe it's just old age, will turn us from doing and doing and doing to simple being, to a being in relationship, a different direction for meaning to take hold of us, to discover a here-now consciousness, not a consciousness that is directed somewhere other than this moment. And that changes everything. Meaning starts to come now from within than from something outside of ourselves. But this doesn't come naturally to us. Something has to come and break hold of these imaginings of spectacular greatness, these imaginings of something that will be meaningful in our lives. Something that will come in, break that hold, and help us to just grow small. Remembering the story of Christmas, to start to grow small again. Take a look at what happens with Job. And if you remember Job, he was the one who everything went wrong. His friends come and tell him, you must have done something wrong to have all this misfortune hit you like this. And he professes his innocence. He professes his uprightness. And he is defending himself. And then finally, at the end of the book, he is confronted by God in the whirlwind. And in this scene here at Job 40, verse 3, Job finally answers the Lord and says, behold, I am insignificant. What can I reply to you? I lay my hand on my mouth. Once I have spoken, and I will not answer, even twice, and I will add nothing more. What did God tell him? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? In other words, I'm God, you're not. Get over it. In that space, right? In that place, in the immensity of that awe of God's presence, he became small. He stopped defending himself. He stopped measuring himself by his doings and the wealth and the accumulations and the acquisitions of everything that he had. And he allowed himself just to feel insignificant, dependent, just letting things go. There are three parts to the experience of this kind of smallness, this kind of loss of sense of self that Job is experiencing. We've talked about it in terms of awe. When we hit that vastness, right? When we hit something that is so much larger than ourselves that it just takes our breath away, it diminishes our sense of self. It takes us offline. We become part of the fabric of whatever the moment is. And these three parts that we are establishing within ourselves without even thinking about it, of course, is a silent reverence, a radical amazement, and an affectionate awe. I'll say that again so Judy can get the notes, because I know she's writing furiously. Silent reverence, radical amazement, and affectionate awe. These three together, you know what they feel like? They feel like gratitude. How are you going to feel anything else when you're in the midst of silent reverence, radical amazement, and affectionate awe? And that gratitude is what feels like meaning, feels like purpose, feels like fulfillment. And it always starts with smallness. There is no other way. That loss of sense of self is the key to everything that follows. This is a theme, a motif that runs throughout the entire Bible, but especially in the New Testament. Take a look at Philippians 2, starting at verse 5. Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a bond servant, a slave, if you will, and being made in the likeness of men, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death. Death, even on a cross. The Greek word is kenosis, which means an emptying. It is the key to everything. It is the key to Jesus' incarnation. It is the key to the Christmas story. It is the key to us being able to see the Christmas story, to appreciate and value who God is showing himself to be. And so much of Jesus' teaching lands right here, this emptying of self. Because without the emptying, there is no filling. It can't happen. It can't fill a full vessel. The emptying allows the filling. And it is the hardest thing for a human being to do, to let go of self, to let go of a sense of our pride, our sense of our own independence. Take a look at Psalm 131. O Lord, my heart is not proud, nor my eyes haughty, nor do I involve myself in great matters, or in things too difficult for me. Surely I have composed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child rest against his mother. My soul is like a weaned child within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forever. He's singing that very sense of having lost that sense of self. Now, actually, it's impossible for any one of us to give up power that we think that we really have. Nobody gives up power if they think they really have it. That's our lifeline. That's what we cling to. That's what gets us through life and gives us the advantage that we need. And so the trick is, as it always is not to give up the power, but to simply see the truth. Remember that scene in The Matrix where the little boy's bending spoons? You know? Don't try to bend the spoon. That's impossible. Only try to see the truth. What truth? There is no spoon. Don't try to give up your power. Don't try to give up your sense of self. Don't try to give up everything that you have accumulated in order to be safe and secure. Just try to see the truth. There is none of that stuff. It's all illusion. We can give up an illusion. That we can do simply by seeing the truth. But we've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to see ourselves as we really are, with humility. Take a look at that last quote from Richard Rohr and Brennan Manning. Humility and honesty are really the same thing. A humble person is simply a brutally honest person about the whole truth. You and I came along a few years ago, and we're going to be gone in a few years. The only honest response to life is a humble one. Alcoholics Anonymous offers a classic definition of humility. Stark, raving honesty. Humility is stark, raving honesty. We weren't here a few years ago. We won't be here in a few years. And in a few years more, no one's going to remember us. What power do we really have? What are we clinging to? This is the truth that we need to see. This is what we're trying to understand of Jesus' message, how this really works. Because the only way to see this honest truth of humility is to lose ourselves in this here-now consciousness, in these moments of vastness and connection. Let that silent reverence, that radical amazement, and that affectionate awe catapult us out into this oneness, this sense of connection with everything. We can't think about it. We can't reason our way through it. We just have to let it fall. Or maybe better is let ourselves fall into it. This is what it's like. It's so different than anything else that we try to get in this life. And this is the Christmas story. And thought of this way, then Christmas becomes the ballast for us. It becomes the balance for us with everything that we need to do on the physical side of life. Christmas is showing us that the smallness is where it's really at. When I'm weak, I'm strong, Paul says. Here we got these balancing acts that we're trying to pull off. But this is what the story of Christmas is really all about. People who were small enough to see God with us right here, right now, incarnated into every seemingly insignificant thing that we experience. I often like to say, never trust anyone who doesn't like dogs or kids. You can take it to the bank. What are we really saying there? Never trust anyone who is not ready to see the value in the smallness of things. They're not ready to be able to have the kind of relationship, the kind of connection that we're talking about. They're not ready for Christmas yet. God with us as an impoverished, helpless child in the Christmas story. Not ready to see it. And until we can, we're going to miss the beauty of the fabric of everything that is here. We're going to miss the sense of meaning and purpose. We've developed a bit of a tradition here at The Effect, and since it didn't happen before Christmas, I actually got some questions. Are you going to read the Wally story? What happened to the Wally story? Come on with the Wally story. So I'm going to read the Wally story because it fits right into what we're talking about, and I'll see if I can get through it this year. Every year, it catches right in my throat. The actual Wally story is called Trouble at the Inn. For years now, whenever Christmas pageants are talked about in a certain little town in the Midwest, someone is sure to mention the name of Wallace Perling. Wally's performance in one annual production of the Nativity play has slipped into the realm of legend. But the old-timers who were in the audience that night never tire of recalling exactly what happened. Wally was 9 that year and in the 2nd grade, though he should have been in the 4th. Most people in town knew that he had difficulty in keeping up. He was big and clumsy, slow in movement and mind. Still, Wally was well liked by the other children in his class, all of whom were smaller than he, though the boys had trouble hiding their irritation if the uncoordinated Wally asked to play ball with them. Most often, they'd find a way to keep him off the field, but Wally would hang around anyway, not sulking, just hoping. He was always a helpful boy, a willing and smiling one, and the natural protector, paradoxically, of the underdog. Sometimes if the older boys chased the younger ones away, it would always be Wally who'd say, "Can't they stay? They're no bother." Wally fancied the idea of being a shepherd with a flute in the Christmas pageant that year. But the play's director, Miss Lombard, assigned him to a more important role. After all, she reasoned, the innkeeper did not have too many lines, and Wally's size would make his refusal of lodging to Joseph more forceful. And so it happened that the usual large partisan audience gathered for the town's Yuletide extravaganza of the staffs and creche, of beards and crowns and halos, and a whole stage full of squeaky voices. No one on stage or off was more caught up in the magic of the night than Wallace Perling. They said later that he stood in the wings and watched the performance with such fascination that from time to time, Miss Lombard had to make sure he didn't wander on stage before his cue. Then the time came when Joseph appeared, slowly, tenderly guiding Mary to the door of the inn. Joseph knocked hard on the wooden door set into the painted backdrop. Wally, the innkeeper, was there waiting. "What do you want?" Wally said, swinging the door open with a brusque gesture. "We seek lodging." "Seek it elsewhere." Wally looked straight ahead, but spoke vigorously. "The inn is filled." "Sir, we have asked everyone and looked everywhere in vain. We have traveled far and are very weary." "There is no room in this inn for you." Wally looked properly stern. "Please, good innkeeper, this is my wife, Mary. She is heavy with child and needs a place to rest. Surely you must have some small corner for her. She is so tired." Now, for the first time, the innkeeper relaxed his stiff stance and looked down at Mary. And with that, there was a long pause, long enough to make the audience a bit tense with embarrassment. "No, be gone," the prompter whispered from the wings. "No," Wally repeated automatically, "be gone." Joseph sadly placed his arm around Mary, and Mary laid her head upon his shoulder. And the two of them started to move away. The innkeeper did not return inside his inn, however. Wally stood there in the doorway, watching the forlorn couple. His mouth was open, his brow creased with concern, his eyes filling unmistakably with tears. "Don't go, Joseph," Wally cried out. "Bring Mary back." And Wallace Perling's face grew into a bright smile. "You can have my room." Some people in town thought that the pageant had been ruined. Yet there were others, many others, who considered it the most Christmas of all Christmas pageants they had ever seen. Who was ready to see in Wallace, and who was not ready to see in Wallace what Christmas is all about? And just a couple of weeks ago, we read about Francis of Assisi, just like Wallace, right? In just the immersion into the nativity play, his smile and licking his lips and bleeding out Bethlehem, and everything that he did is so reminiscent. Now, Wally had an advantage over us, didn't he? He can't outgrow the smallness of his infancy. That's who he is. But as long as we see this as deficient, as long as we categorize this as disabled, as long as we think that there's a failing here, then we're not ready for Christmas. See, we're not disabled. We are the Magi. We're the wealthy ones, relatively speaking. We're the powerful ones, relatively speaking. We're the educated ones. But as long as we see ourselves that way and hang on to those attributes as the source of our advantage, as a source of our security, then we're not ready. We're not ready for Christmas. And as long as we work to leave some lasting legacy, some way that people will remember us in a spectacular way, then we are Havel. We are chasing after the wind, and we're going to miss all the meaning that life has to offer. So our prayer today should be that whatever it is that we need, even if it's painful, to lose ourselves in the here now moment, let it come. Let it come sooner rather than later. That everything that is here now becomes our everything, and not something that we want to import or imagine in our minds. Our legacy is here now. Not in something someone will remember as spectacular. It's right here. It's right now, or it's not at all. And it will always be contained in the consciousness of a legacy of little things. Let's pray. Now, Father, the genius of our scriptures is overwhelming. These stories that we know so well, help us to see them completely anew. Help us to see them from a different angle. Help us to see what they're really trying to show us and tell us, so that we can begin the process of wrapping our lives around these truths. Begin changing ourselves from the inside out and experiencing life the way you experience life. This kingdom that we talk about that changes everything about every experience. That's what we want, but we're in the way. We're our own worst enemy. Help us, Lord, to see that the smallness of things is what's going to take us where we really want to go, and to begin the process of clearing out, letting go of the things that we still carry around, letting go of the fear that we have that we won't be remembered, because this is the only moment that exists, and the only moment that ever will exist in eternity. Thank you, Father, for being that moment of eternity for us. Help us more and more to enter into it, into you, and see the truth. And never let us forget we can only love because you loved us first. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let's all stand.